Elaine no longer tends to the roses outside her porch, but she still has a garden. It just lives inside the tiny screen she opens every morning. Elaine Brooks is 74 years old, a retired librarian, a widow, a woman who once spent her mornings pruning lavender and her evenings sipping tea beside her backyard lilies. Gardening wasn't just a hobby to Elaine. It was how she grieved, how she celebrated, how she stayed grounded. But after a bad fall last winter that left her knees permanently weakened, she stopped stepping outside altogether. The flower beds overgrew, the watering can rusted in its corner, and in its place, silence grew. For months, she sat inside, watching the world through the window like a faded photograph. Until one quiet Sunday, her granddaughter visited with a gift she didn't expect. An app called Gardenize and an invitation to a Facebook group called Senior Gardeners. At first, Elaine laughed. What can a screen do that the soil can't? But something changed when she uploaded her first plant photo, shared her old garden's layout, and received 10 kind comments from strangers who felt like friends. Slowly, something began to bloom again, not just in her virtual garden, but in her spirit. This video is for every senior who once found joy in growing something and now wonders if those days are gone. Today, we'll explore 5 powerful reasons why digital gardening isn't just a modern trend, it's a lifeline. A way to nurture your mind, your body, and your heart from wherever you are, even if your knees say no. You'll discover how technology can help you reconnect with nature, with others, and most importantly, with yourself. So if you've ever felt like your best gardening days are behind you, stay with us. The seeds of a new season may be just one screen away. Elaine doesn't play Sudoku. She never learned chess. But somehow, her memory started getting sharper, just by watering plants at the right time every morning. It began with a single notification. Time to water your rosemary. Elaine tapped the screen, read a quick note she had written 2 weeks before. Rosemary likes sunlight but not too much water, just like Harold used to say. She smiled, then added a photo of the plant's progress and typed a short update. The process was simple, yet something unexpected happened. Each day, she began remembering more. Not just plant names and care schedules, but what she had eaten for lunch, which neighbor called last Thursday, or where she last put her reading glasses. Her mind felt lighter, more alive. You see, every time Elaine opened the app, she was giving her brain a quiet workout, remembering which plant was where, what it needed, how it had changed. These were small tasks, but they lit up parts of the brain responsible for memory, attention, and learning. According to a study by Stanford University, older adults who regularly engage in activities that require observation and memory, especially involving nature, can reduce their risk of cognitive decline by up to 32%. It's like exercise, but for the mind. And unlike puzzles or memory games, gardening apps don't feel like work. They feel like care, like purpose. A common misconception is that technology is only for the young. But when tech is connected to something deeply personal, like the lavender your late wife loved or the mint you used to brew for your grandchildren, it's no longer about screens or apps. It becomes memory made visible. It becomes heartwork. And for Elaine, that daily mental dance was only the beginning. Because what she was doing on that screen didn't just help her remember, it helped her feel again. And as we'll see next, those quiet moments with digital plants also did something remarkable to her body. Elaine used to lie awake for hours, but now she falls asleep peacefully each night. After quietly looking through the digital garden she's been nurturing with her own hands. There was a time when 2 a.m. felt like a cruel friend. Elaine would toss and turn, her thoughts spinning faster than any ceiling fan above her head. But everything changed the evening she scrolled through her photo album labeled My Little Garden. On that screen, she saw her basil sprouting new leaves, her daisies unfolding gently, and a tiny note she'd written. Day 14. The lavender is reaching for light today, just like I am. That night, she slept for 7 straight hours. It's easy to forget how powerful a simple shade of green can be. Studies from environmental health perspectives found that even just looking at images of greenery can lower cortisol levels, the hormone tied to stress, by an average of 21%. The slow, steady rhythm of watching plants grow, especially ones you've cared for yourself, has a calming effect few things can match. Elaine no longer starts her nights by watching the news. She ends them by walking through her digital garden, leaf by leaf, memory by memory. She's not alone. In California, a group of seniors began something called the Night Garden Journal. Each evening, they take one photo of their garden, real or virtual, and write a sentence about what they noticed. A new bud, a subtle color shift, even the sound of silence in the background. Then, before bed, they look back at those moments. And what they found was simple but profound. The garden quieted their minds when nothing else could. So what would you rather carry into your sleep? Headlines full of fear, or a soft reminder that something you care about is still growing? Elaine chose the garden, and in doing so, she didn't just sleep better. She began to move better too. Because what started as a nightly ritual of looking soon turned into something even more powerful: gentle motion, quiet strength, and a reason to stand back up each day. It started small. A notification reminded her to water the thyme on her windowsill, so she stood up. Later, she leaned a little to capture a better photo of her mint plant. The next day, she reached to adjust the angle of sunlight for her fern, then jotted down a quick note in her app. None of it felt like exercise, but her body began to notice. Her knees didn't ache as much. Her steps felt steadier, and for the first time in months, she started to feel confident walking across the room without her cane. Many people think staying active means taking long walks or signing up for classes at the senior center. But for someone like Elaine, who no longer feels safe outside alone, digital gardening brought movement back into her life right where she was. Research from Harvard shows that just 20 minutes of light movement each day, standing, reaching, walking slowly, can reduce the risk of falls in adults over 70 by up to 25%. That's not a gym workout. That's a few gentle steps toward the basil by the window, a few more toward the notebook you forgot on the counter, a few turns to check your plant's angle in the morning sun. Elaine created little rituals. She watered her balcony plants at sunrise. She photographed them again at noon. She sat to review the app's suggestions in the afternoon. Without realizing it, she was stretching, turning, moving, and strengthening her balance along the way. What mattered wasn't how far she walked, but how often she moved with intention and joy. So maybe it's time we let go of the idea that only sweat counts as movement. For Elaine, motion didn't begin with a treadmill. It began with a tiny pot of thyme and a little spark of curiosity. And soon, that curiosity led her beyond movement into something even more beautiful: connection. Because while plants grew on her screen, something else was growing too: her circle of friends. 4 months after joining the group, Elaine had over 60 new friends across 7 states, all because of a little tomato called Juliet. It began with a single post. A woman from Texas shared a photo of her Juliet tomato plant just beginning to bud. Elaine, curious, left a comment. That one comment led to a reply, then another. Within days, a thread had formed where seniors from Michigan to Florida were swapping tips, photos, and even recipes for the tomatoes they were growing together. Every week, they'd hop on a Zoom call to compare growth, talk about setbacks, and cheer each other on. Elaine hadn't felt that connected to people since her husband passed. It turns out when people grow the same thing at the same time, even if they've never met, they begin to grow something else too: trust, laughter, shared joy. According to data from NIA.gov, feeling part of a community can lower symptoms of depression in seniors by as much as 40%. And in the digital gardening world, that community is just a click away. Elaine's Facebook group wasn't just a place to show off plants. It was a place where someone noticed if she didn't post for a few days, where her ideas mattered, where her memories of Harold and their old garden were met with warmth and stories from others who had also loved and lost. She even joined a project called One Seed, One State, where thousands of seniors planted the same flower across different cities and then shared progress through photos. Some grew better than others. Some withered in the sun. But the joy wasn't in perfection, it was in participation. So many seniors believe loneliness is just something to live with, but Elaine's Juliet tomatoes said otherwise. They reminded her she still had something to give. And just as important, she still had people to give it to. And the more she gave, the more alive she felt. Because this garden wasn't just growing friends, it was awakening something she thought she'd left behind forever, her creativity. Elaine recreated her wedding garden from 1974 using a digital design tool, lavender on the left, white roses on the right, and one small note tucked into the corner, because he's still somewhere in every bloom. It wasn't just nostalgia, it was healing. With a tablet in her lap and memory as her guide, Elaine began sketching a garden she hadn't walked through in over 40 years. She remembered every detail. The scent of lavender on her veil. The way Harold had knelt beside the white rosebush with soil still on his tuxedo shoes. She used a gardening app to lay out the exact spacing of the flowers. She matched the colors to her old photos. And slowly, her screen began to fill with something far more than pixels. It was a living tribute, a mosaic of moments that had defined a part of her life, and now gave her a new way to hold on to it. Digital gardening offers more than tools for growing plants. It invites seniors to become artists of memory, to paint with petals, to build spaces not just for beauty but for meaning. The joy is in choosing what goes where, how colors speak to each other, what shape the path should take. Some design butterfly gardens for grandchildren. Others recreate the small porch garden their mother once cared for. It's not about technology. It's about storytelling. With every decision, seniors reclaim a sense of authorship over their lives. And you don't need a background in art or gardening. You just need a memory and a little imagination. Whether it's rebuilding your grandmother's herb corner or designing the garden from your childhood street, digital platforms make it possible to turn those memories into something visual, beautiful, and enduring. For Elaine, it was a reminder that even after loss, something inside her was still blooming. And every time she opened that garden on her screen, she didn't just see plants. She saw the life she'd built, the love she'd kept, and the creativity she thought had long faded. But perhaps the most powerful thing Elaine discovered wasn't just what she could remember or create. It was how all of it, her memory, her movement, her connections, came together to give her something even greater, a reason to begin again. Elaine didn't just grow plants. She grew herself again, through technology, through memory, and through the quiet joy of tending to something that still needed her every single day. What began as a screen in her hands became a doorway back to her strength. Digital gardening wasn't a trend or a passing distraction. It became her bridge, between the past and the present, between sorrow and something soft enough to hold, between the weight of being alone and the warmth of being part of something again. And for Elaine, each photo, each journal note, each tiny bloom on the screen reminded her that life didn't stop when her knees gave out. It just began again, differently. You don't need a big backyard or perfect health to plant something that matters. All you need is the willingness to care, even if your garden lives in an app, even if your flowers grow through pixels and time. That garden can still nourish your mind. It can still bring back memories. It can still hold the scent of someone you miss and the shape of everything you once loved. So if you have a parent, a grandparent, or someone you care about who's over 65, share this video with them. Or better yet, sit beside them, download an app, help them choose a plant, maybe even design the first garden together, because what you're giving them isn't just a hobby, it's a lifeline. It's permission to create again, to remember again, and to feel needed again. Somewhere inside each of us, there's still a season waiting to bloom, and sometimes It starts with something as simple as a single seed and a screen.